Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda, and please welcome to our Operation Freedom platform, WeThePeopleProcessing.com. You know, are you tired of being threatened to be canceled just because you have a company focused on liberty and freedom? Well, worry no more, folks. WeThePeopleProcessing.com is your go-to merchant services, freedom-based company to provide business service payment solutions. We the People Processing provides their clients a cancel culture-free platform which is domestically based. They provide competitive rates, no contracts with next-day funding, a fully vetted and like-minded financial infrastructure, and full support for integrations, implementation, and e-commerce efforts. Bottom line, WeThePeopleProcessing.com focuses on defending your company's free market growth, values, and future. Check them out at www.WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Once you're on the site, enter in password Operation Freedom or call 855-499-2024. That's WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Then, when on the website, enter Operation Freedom as your password or call 855-499-2024. You know, folks, for 32 years, I had the privilege and the honor of practicing medicine on the front line of healthcare delivery. Unfortunately, since I retired at the end of 2016, the practice of medicine has changed, and I believe not for the better. And I give you the example of what happened with COVID. In addition to my role as a practicing orthopedic surgeon for 32 years on the front line of healthcare delivery and focusing on taking care of people that had been injured, another part of my professional career, a big part of it, was focused on research. And research that was focused on preventing people from getting injured in the first place. Now, one would think this would be a huge number of people involved in prevention-related research. And the answer is there were very few of us, and still are. Why? I could give you a lot of diplomatic answers, but those of you who know me know I'm not a diplomat. The answer is there's no money in prevention. And one of the hallmarks we did with our research at the Institute for Preventative Sports Medicine is we looked at injuries that were occurring to the population, and then we said, well, can there be a better mousetrap to protect people? Which is one of the studies of which I was the lead investigator for, which started at the University of Michigan and carried over to the Institute. According to the federal government, just one of our studies led to the prevention of 1.7 million people from being injured a year and saved $2 billion every year. And what we did to accomplish that is we looked at a piece of equipment and said, we need to change it. We need to modify it. Now, why do I bring that up? Because in January of 2020, when this pathogen started to come on our shores, Dr. Peter Glidden and I, and our entire series, by the way, is at davejanda.com, and it's also at operationfreedomhealth.com, and some of them are still on our YouTube channel, Operation Freedom. Peter and I said there's a couple things we need to do, whether it's any kind of pathogen, and that is you need to wash your hands more, and people laughed at that. No, it makes a difference. And we talked about nutrients to utilize to enhance your immune system. People laughed at that. No, it works. And then we talked about, look, sanitizers are not all the same. Sanitizers are important to be used. However, just as there are different pieces of equipment in sports that can either not help much and some that have huge benefits, the same is true with sanitizers. Which is why my next guest, Jay Baum, is so important for you to learn from. Look, Jay surveilled the landscape as it relates to sanitizers and disinfectants years ago. And he realized that there was a problem, that it could be, these sanitizers and disinfectants could be made better against bacteria and viruses and spores and fungi, and it could last for much longer time period. When you put those alcohol-based sanitizers on your hands, they only last until you can stop smelling the alcohol on your hands. That's right. Well, you might say, well, wait, that's like a minute. Yeah. So what Jay did is he started a company, Germ-Free Innovations, and he's the president. And 8 years ago, Jay discovered a new disinfectant technology that formed a bond, if you will, on surfaces and offered extended protection from pathogens. And that technology, well, that was actually determined to be revolutionary when compared to conventional sanitizers. And then they did tremendous research. They did some initial research, then they did tremendous more in-depth research. And it's interesting that after further research, it became apparent that this MyShield product line had the most advanced chemistries in this polymer technology. And this is really important for your health and welfare, which is why the only sanitizer that we have on OperationFreedomHealth.com is the MyShield sanitizer. It is what I use every day. It is the sanitizer and their disinfectants, the disinfectants to use. And in fact, there was a recent study done at the University of Michigan that we're going to speak about. But it is my honor to welcome Jay Baum to the Operation Freedom Show and Platform. Jay, welcome to the Operation Freedom Show and Platform.
Thank you, Dave. Pleasure to be here, and a fantastic introduction, especially on the subject of prevention.
Well, and I thank you, Jay, for everything you have done, are doing, and will do, because your product helps millions, hundreds of millions of people from a prevention standpoint. So educate our listeners on this entire process of when you first got involved with this and where we are today.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, you actually described a lot of it a moment ago, and that is just a whole new look at how do we kill germs. Germs is a generic term for bacteria, viruses, fungi, etc. So looking at the backdrop of COVID, for example, we look at this, and we all have to admit we've never been through anything like this. It's been very, very politically charged. There's been an incessant demand for these products, and the public very, very concerned about sanitizing in general, and that would be with hands and surfaces. And really, we've got three things that we address, and that is surfaces, hands, touch points. But hands are such a primary vehicle for transmission of germs. And it's not just COVID, of course, it's everything else. But what we really discovered was 8 years ago, when we teamed up with another company that really had the patents and the science behind it, a company called ESC Brands. And together, we market a brand called MyShield. So MyShield is a name that is indicative of what it sounds like. We are shielding you. So we put on MyShield. And speaking about medicine, as you did, it's hard to believe and imagine that we are today where we have been for the last 40 years. We still use alcohol, peroxide, chloride, chlorine-based products, bleach, etc., all of these harsh, harmful chemicals. And we continue to pour more and more of these chemicals on microbes, hoping that they continue to die, right, that it kills them. But what you said is exactly right. When we put on, for example, let's just drill down to something we all use, and that is alcohol hand sanitizers. Americans are addicted to it. It's all that's pushed. It's pushed by the CDC, hospitals, etc. But when you put alcohol on, it is drying very quickly. It's killing the germs. But once it dries, there is no effect, no continued protection. With our formulation, which I can speak more about in a moment, it actually offers protection because it makes a nanopolymer coating or glove, for example, on your hands with no alcohol and continues to kill pathogens, germs, for up to 24 hours, but at a high level, clinically justified in clinicals we have for 4 to 8 hours without the damage and effect of alcohol to your skin.
Say that again about how long it lasts, right? So we know from the alcohol-based products that are out there that the CDC and the feds push, it lasts until you can stop smelling the alcohol, right? Less than a minute, maybe less than a minute. Yet with this polymer that you've created, this MyShield, we're talking on hands, tell me if I'm wrong, at least 4 hours and up to 24 hours. And with your disinfectants on surfaces, again, tell me if I'm wrong, Jay, 28 days?
Sure. Well, when we say things like 28 days, it's really up to 28 days. We have testing showing up to 30 days with COVID. However, let me back up and say that those are based on clinical studies. It doesn't mean it absolutely does that. That's not anything you'll see on the label, but those are claims we make based on clinical studies done in GLP-type labs. Now, back to the hand sanitizer, and then this is the overall technology in general. Instead of killing germs with a chemical kill that is poisoning germs, what happens is this water-based formulation forms a nanopolymer. It's silicone-based. It's a nanopolymer. It's water-based. If you've ever used the product Rain-X, is a silicone-based product. You put it on your windshield. It makes an invisible silicone barrier. It's much like that. And it's not hazardous. It is applied to your hands. It forms this nanopolymer. And what it does is it has a positive charge. It creates these little spikes. And the spikes have a positive charge pulling negatively charged bacteria viruses to them, which causes them to be electrocuted, pierced, stabbed. It just kind of obliterates them. In fact, there's good material on your website about that as well. And the same thing happens on surfaces. Now, let me just mention one thing that's of real interest is that when you look at alcohol hand sanitizers, they're regulated, by the way, by the FDA, not CDC. There's a lot of confusion out there. It's the FDA that regulates all this. If you're using ethyl alcohol, you have to have at least 70% of the content as ethyl or isopropyl, 60% on ethyl, 70% on isopropyl. There are 3 ingredients that the FDA approves for hand sanitizers: ethanol, isopropyl alcohol, and another one called benzalkonium chloride. We use BZK. The concentration of it is 48 times lower in our formulation than it is with what you have with alcohol. That means you're not getting much on there. It has the same kill rates. You kill COVID in 30 seconds, for example, and it has persistent effect in our formula on this polymer. Still about 94 to 95% of the same effective protection at 4 hours that you had when you applied it. About 85% when you look at 8 hours. And again, that's based on clinicals.
Jay, when I apply MyShield hand sanitizer on my hand, within seconds of it being on, I feel kind of like a powdery effect on my hand. It feels like I don't see powder on my hands, but I have a kind of a smoothness, a powdery feel. Educate our listeners on that's that nanotechnology that you're talking about, correct? Nanoparticles.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, exactly. So it leaves your hands feeling very nicely. In fact, it was funny, I was talking to somebody the other day that was a lead person in a hospital buying group, and we made the point, if we took 100 nurses and let them use MyShield, for example, for a week, there would not be one single one that would choose alcohol over it because your hands become soft-feeling. They're not dry. It doesn't cause dermatitis. It doesn't dry your hands, as I'm saying. But what it does is, because you've got this water-based silicone product, it's very gentle and it conditions, but we also add aloe vera in it. So within about a minute, your hands start feeling very silky and very soft. So it feels wonderful, and it doesn't leave any odor. And the nice thing, again, too, is we have such a low concentration of the effective chemical benzalkonium chloride, which we call BZK, and that becomes part of the polymer, too, that you don't need to put this on many times a day. If you put it on about 2-3 times a day, you probably are fine unless you wash your hands a whole lot. Now, that would not apply to professional people like nurses, but for the general public, yes, but it does leave your hands feeling very soft, very nice.
Well, and that's the question many people have. Okay, so I put this on and it's going to last for, let's say, 4 hours, but now I'm going to go wash my hands. That means I have to put on more. Jay, what I have found, I base it on how my hands feel, right? So I can wash my hands throughout the day and I still have that powdery feel. It's still, to me, it's still in effect. Am I off?
That's correct. Now, and it will come off because people do ask, well, gosh, does this come off? Well, of course it does because you exfoliate. And so this, what we call silk.
Jay? I think we lost Jay. We're going to have Derek try to get him back on the phone. We apparently have lost connections with Jay Baum, the president of Germ-Free Innovations. And see, folks, we are approached on this show and on this platform because of my work in prevention about having certain products that are advertised on this platform that we have on OperationFreedomHealth.com. And this is why we never recommended or had on our platform other products of this nature. And the only reason why I brought this on OperationFreedomHealth.com is the fact that it is FDA approved, EPA approved, and I don't know of any other product that's FDA and EPA approved. I think we have Jay back. Jay, you back?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that. As the world turns, I'm at home and we have a big, got electrical storm going on. Lost power and Wi-Fi went out, so had to get off the Wi-Fi. So here I am. Sorry about that.
No problem. Jay, I was just talking about the fact that MyShield products and the handset, they're EPA and FDA approved, correct?
Well, actually, the FDA has jurisdiction over anything that goes on the skin. So it is FDA registered, approved. Now, approved is really considered to drugs, but it's FDA registered, MDC codes. All of it's legitimate, of course, and we do use that central ingredient. EPA has jurisdiction over the surface products, so those are EPA approved, and especially like with COVID. So the EPA does not have jurisdiction over skin products, and that's whether it's true for us or anybody else. One thing I was going to mention, though, too, about this persistence, which is so important, is the fact that you have such a low concentration of the primary ingredient in there, which is good because there is concern from the scientific community, if you really look, about repeated exposure to alcohol, ethanol, especially to skin at the cellular level for many years of use, where we're using BZK at 1/48th the amount, 48 times less, and use it infrequent, you have very low exposure. You would have to use the brand X, for example, alcohol hand sanitizer, 12 times or more per hour to even come close to the same level of protection just for 1 hour. So it becomes much more expensive if you're looking at price, because that does come up much more expensive to get the same effectiveness.
Now, Jay, I mentioned in our introduction, the University of Michigan just did a study on your products. Educate our listeners about the study and the findings, because it's very interesting.
Yes, correct. Well, thank you for the opportunity to do that. So what happened is we received an invitation from the University of Michigan last summer in the field of athletics from their lead sports trainer, who's a pretty knowledgeable, educated guy. And the audience might be interested in that his primary motivation was not COVID. It was MRSA. That's the big problem in athletics. So eventually what was determined was they wanted to compare MyShield, broad-spectrum disinfectant, which is EPA approved. And the central question is, okay, does this really do what this company says it will do from all the clinical studies? Meaning that when you apply it and it dries and it sets up that nanopolymer, does it continue to protect and kill germs for extended periods of time? Does it do it for 1 day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc., versus what we're using? So what they chose was a locker room at the university, because locker rooms have a lot of traffic, a lot of high bacterial loads, etc., and I'll just make this short and sweet. They applied their hospital-grade disinfectant that has a 1-minute TB kill claim, so it's like a Ferrari. Hospitals use it all over America, every day to that side of the locker room where all the athletes sit. They applied MyShield to side B once every day for the first week so we could stack and layer. During the first week, our rates of bacteria growth were 93 to 100% less than the hospital product, meaning when the athletes came back in and used the locker room, they were adding more bacteria, and it would grow with the other product, but not with MyShield. Week 2, they did MyShield every other day. We were 95 to 100% lower than the other product every other day, and they were applied every day. We had 8 days where we had 0 counts. Weeks 4 and 5, they applied MyShield only once per week. The hospital-grade product they were using on side A, their standard product, they applied every day again. We were an average of 70% better, even though it was only once a week, which means that in that particular case, they're probably going to make a decision. I'm not telling what they've said, but they could make a decision, well, do we want to do it every other day, twice a week, once a week? The point is that you could apply MyShield with a lot less frequency and still have superior results in holding down the growth of bacteria. Those were the results of the study.
So, Jay, from a humanitarian standpoint, obviously it's much more protective for people.
That's right.
But what I found in the prevention world is people would say to me, okay, Dave, okay, yeah, okay. But you know what? I know this is hard to believe, but this is what I was told on numerous occasions with our preventive interventions. You know, Dave, we're really not that interested in, helping people. But you know what? Will it save us money? Okay, I'm not kidding, Jay. Okay, so from a humanitarian standpoint, you are protecting people with these MyShield products at a much higher level than other products. But to those that just care about money, well, what you just explained, Jay, based on this University of Michigan study, if I'm running a hospital or I'm running a nursing home or I'm running a daycare or I'm running a school or I'm running a household, this is going to save me money.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because so often when we get into very simple economic look where people are just saying, well, what does it cost per gallon? That's a very shallow view. It's not the same thing. Because what we have to look at is, first of all, if you're able to reduce frequency, like in the case of Michigan, or we actually have some commuter service trains that are using it and so on, and transportation. If instead of having to apply it every night, for example, or once a day, and you're only getting efficacy for maybe 15 minutes, we've got to acknowledge that we're not really preventing. We're killing what's there now, and that's it. And as soon as we start having people around, we live in a world of viruses and bacteria. They're all around us. They're like omnipresent.